This is Social Leopards. I'm Bea.
And I'm Beth. A leopard is a solitary creature living in the jungle but often not seen or noticed. Are you a solitary creature trying to navigate the social jungle?
This show explores loneliness and the many ways forward. Welcome to Social Leopards. So today we're talking about divorce and the loneliness that comes from divorce and relationship, like breakup in general. And we thought we would interview each other about our experiences. So
That sounds great.
do you want to start?
Gosh, I think I want to preface this with we have received some feedback from a few people from our listening and watching now audience about addressing relationship breakups and how isolating and lonely that can be. I know, and I shared my story in season 1 about changing relationships and coming to a new town.
That's right, you did, yes.
Starting to feel like it was hard to make friends, but I haven't talked about what it felt like as I was going through the divorce, because what ends up happening is that people take sides. And I was in a town with a lot of people that were either part of my dad's church family or they were part of this large family that wasn't my family. And so it got really difficult. And I started to retreat and regress because I didn't want to hear any negativity. And then all of a sudden, with kids in tow and all of this other stuff, it got harder and harder. It is a very isolating feeling. And then when you fear that judgment on top of it, I think that makes it even rougher. And I know that especially if you've been in a long-term relationship with a lot of mutual friends, they feel like they have to be loyal to one person or the other, and they can't stay friends with both. And so where do you end up? Did you have any of that going on?
So you just made me think about this, the whole loyalty thing. So what happened with our friend group is they decided to try to be loyal to both of us and didn't take sides. And I think that's also another problem because they feel like I was not validated with what happened. And also, I don't know that I gave them all the details. They knew some, but they also tried heavily to get us back together because it was in their interest. We were part of the friend group and you like to keep your friends together because you have this, if you have a marriage or if you have a friendship, you plan this life. You plan it out. We're going to be doing these things and we have these people that are filling in these gaps for this activity. And then you've got to grieve that or you've got to recombine it some way.
Yeah.
So they were trying very hard to figure out ways to get us back together. That made it very difficult. More painful. Also, staying in the same area was very hard for me. Going to places that we went to as a couple for years and years, I just did not want to go to. So moving was really healthy for me to move away from that community.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. But yeah, I also moved away. And it was really hard, but it was probably the best and the fastest way for me to actually heal from my experience.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's the worst, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the things that people don't realize is that the loss of a relationship is exactly like the loss of a loved one, almost as if it were a death. When we were planning this episode, and this is an inappropriate moment that we're willing to share, is that sometimes you do have some inappropriate feelings as you're going through a divorce.
Yes.
And I never wished that I would commit a homicide, but I did wish that something would happen so that I would never see my husband again, or my ex-husband, before he was actually my ex. So I think that's very common. I hear a lot of people talking about, man, if I had the money for a hitman.
Yes, exactly.
And you don't really mean it. We're not suggesting this, people.
Although if you can get away with it, just kidding. There's that book that woman wrote.
Yes.
Did you ever read that, How to Get Away with Murder?
Yes.
She actually, I don't know, I think she ended up in jail, so that did not work out very well, but interesting idea.
I think most of them do. Yes. Yeah, if you start advertising on the black, or what is that, the dark internet?
The dark web.
The dark web.
Yes,
dark web. See, I'm not familiar with any of those nefarious places, but you usually end up talking to a cop.
Yes.
So not a good idea to pursue in real life. But yeah. Anyway, I feel like when we are, where was I going? Let me see. We were talking about how it is a grief process that you go through.
And as a matter of fact, they talk about divorce being more actually painful than a death. And part of that is because the person is still there. It's not resolved. There's no finality. It's still ongoing. So we can't almost get over it because the person's still alive, versus somebody dies, we grieve, we let it go because they're not coming back.
Yeah.
So I think that makes it more painful too.
It does. And then if there are children involved, I think that also adds another layer of complexity, because when you have children who are not 18 or older, you are still going to have, most likely, unless you have a deadbeat parent, you're going to have an ongoing connection with your
That's correct.
ex-partner, ex-spouse, whatever it is.
Baby daddy.
Yes, you're going to have to exchange kids. You're going to have to talk about finances. That's right. You're going to have all of that out. And that can be extra stressful and hard to negotiate at times.
I think so.
And I know I had a pretty loosey-goosey
arrangement.
Custodial, and the whole thing was very liberal and subject to some interpretation. Luckily, my ex-husband never really pushed back, or we worked things out, and then there were shifts, and there were some times as the kids were growing up when one or the other of us was in a different financial situation. We flip-flopped who carried the health insurance for the kids over the years to make it fair to the greatest extent. So I was lucky in that respect. I was also fortunate enough to have someone who, for the very most part, put the kids ahead of the broken up relationship. And I don't know, it goes back and forth where we haven't talked in several years, but there's no reason to now, really. Right. If a kid got, I don't know, I don't think I'm going to have any more grandchildren. But if something like that happened, I'm sure there would be a reason to get together. But once the kids were adults, I think it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very difficult when they're small and you're thinking about how they're feeling and you have to support them, support yourself. I thought those were the most challenging moments when I thought about how my daughter must be feeling. And I couldn't change what was happening. Just had to support her. But I think now it's much easier that she's an adult because she survived her childhood, as we say. And I think she's okay. And I think your kids probably made it through as well.
Yeah.
It could be much worse.
Yeah. And I think the good news about a breakup when your kids are young is that they do grow up. And if you keep a healthy relationship with them, then eventually they come into this period of knowing and understanding
what happened,
a lot more. And I think at a very subconscious level, when there's an unhealthy relationship in tow, I think that it is clear.
Yes.
They may not be able to verbalize it or fully understand it.
Until they're older.
Yes. And then life experience picks up and all of the gaps start to follow or get filled in. And I think that people eventually, small adults grow up into mature adults and they're very much more knowing. And I've been able to have some deeper conversations with my kids and acknowledging that it's a two-way street. And no matter how you feel, you can't blame the other person for that. But making friends, like going back to that original question, did you find that you had to start over and find a brand new friend group? You moved and I moved, so that kind of forced that situation on us.
Yeah, I did. And I'll tell you the toughest part, and you probably can relate, being a single parent in, unfortunately, what seemingly was a situation where everyone had a partner, whether it was a recombined family or then I was the only single parent for years. And I worked, and I didn't have the opportunity to be part of all the school things, the school activities. So I didn't make friends organically like you would have if we were still married and we had our partners working. You had the traditional piece where you got the chance to be with your kids and go to school. So I didn't have that. And so for years I was very much alone. And finally, when I got remarried is when my social life, I think, really started. And of course, when I met you, but then all that together combined. More than I think I was very much alone and struggling. And I'm not quite sure whether it was that I was so focused on my child or whether I didn't really have the time or I really didn't know which groups to go to. I think it's just tougher when you're in these life situations. It's not the same as when you're in school, then you get married and you have kids. When things get disconnected, it's hard to know how to reorient yourself back to like balance again, because we don't really talk about these things.
We really
Still,
don't.
as a society, we don't.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were to encounter someone who was just now starting or experiencing a breakup, a significant breakup of taking kids out of the equation, because not everybody has kids.
That's right. That's true.
But just to focus on how to process, what would be the first piece of wisdom that you would impart, or a lesson learned that you would share with a friend who came to you saying, I don't know what to do. I'm just so lost and lonely and feel like so isolated.
And are they like divorced or going, which stage?
Doesn't matter. Just like freshly alone.
I think the first thing to do is to reach out to whatever friends you have and try to talk to them the more people you can. Counseling, I would say. I think I did that right away. I found somebody who I could talk to. If you are someone who enjoys sports or activities, I would sign myself up for an activity if I had the time to do that.
Yeah.
Just to get myself out of that headspace and start reconnecting, and exercise is so important anyway,
Right.
because it just makes you feel better. Those endorphins start kicking in. But I think anything that you can do to make yourself feel calm and centered so you can figure out what your next step is. Because I think a lot of people just get so stressed out, they don't know what to do, and they just keep going, get depressed, and things just get worse and their health declines. All of that is just a vicious circle. So
Yeah.
it's important to take care of yourself as quickly as you can. And also knowing that it's not going to last forever.
It is not.
So,
It feels like it in
Yes.
the moment,
Yeah.
but it is not going to last forever.
and that you're not alone, that many people have gone through this.
Yeah. I feel like when I was processing the divorce, I think I feared the being alone part. And I think I probably also feared not what if. I think I went through a lot of what if situations. And I was like, what if I never am loved again? I never fall in love again.
Again, yeah.
And I put a lot of focus during my first marriage on, I need to make this person happy. I need to be here for this person. I felt a lot of sense of obligation to keep the marriage together, work as hard as I can. What am I doing
kids.
wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I got into a shortish term relationship with another person probably far too soon after my divorce, and I let it get all consuming right away. And at first, I thought this was a completely different person. And turns out it was the same person. Not physically, but just different symptoms. But still not the right person for me. Not someone who was interested in listening or responding to my needs or even ever putting me first. And so it took the breakup of that relationship to really bring me full circle. And I don't think I really processed the loss of the relationship. So I think the first thing that I would share with someone who came to me, and I have shared this with people going through relationship breakups before, that you really have to process, and you really have to learn how to, the thing that was most important for me, which I didn't learn until the second major relationship breakup, was you have to learn how to be okay being alone. You decided, you made the conscious choice to just concentrate on raising your daughter and making it alone in this world. And I think that probably was very healthy for you, even though I think it probably caused you to feel even more lonely in the overall scheme of things.
I think it empowered me to some extent, but also I didn't realize how much social interaction or the social needs were met through that marriage. You know what I'm saying? Because everything was attached to friends of the couple. I really didn't have single friends anymore. So I think, unfortunately, going forward, another piece of advice would be to have both. You have friends with your spouse or your partner, you have single friends as well. So you've got that balance.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest emotional changes that you faced while you were transitioning into a single life?
Gosh, it was like so long ago.
I know it was a long time ago.
I think I felt not always. I think we talked about briefly, like that I had to grieve the fantasy that I had, that relationship, that first marriage was going to be a certain way. It was going to work out a particular way that I planned it. And that was a very sad thing to have to realize that was not going to happen. And that was the toughest thing to say. Now I have to replan my life and I have to come up with a new life plan. And I think that's the toughest thing for people when you do go through a breakup, that how can I make this okay again? Which life plan can I choose now that will make me happy, or as equally happy as I thought I was going to be? So that thing was probably the toughest thing, of saying this is not going to work out that way, and it's okay. But it was very sad, that part for me. And also, I felt like a failure. I think when you said you did everything to make it work, I did too. And I had this pridefulness about me that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to have it. It's going to work no matter what. It's going to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure it out, and it's going to work because I'm not going to fail. And I think that pridefulness stood in the way of me realizing sooner that this was not the right fit for me, and I should have walked away a long time ago. And I felt very pressured too, for a variety of reasons, to keep it together. And I finally realized that the people around me who I was associating with really did have great relationships, and they were respected by their partners, and they were happy, and they were a team. And I was not. And if I didn't meet them, if I hadn't met them, I never would have known that. So there were great things that came out of that.
Oh, that's very insightful, that you were able to find inspiration in a happy marriage. Because I do run across people too who get a little resentful of others who are seemingly living the perfect life. And believe me, everybody out there, nobody has a perfect marriage. Nobody has a perfect life. It's not all, I'm trying to think of some Father Knows Best. I could only think of really old TV shows, because I think Leave It to Beaver. Yes, those types of things. But I think even as time went on in the way that we watch television and the shows that came out, I think that by the 70s, the reality of how families actually live started coming out in television. Yeah. So you didn't see Little House on the Prairie. I'm thinking all these 70s shows, but you don't see that kind of stuff.
That's like something, that's like an anomaly, like going on there. That's not even relatable, I think.
But then you get more like the Everybody Loves Raymond type of show a little bit later on.
Yes.
Was that the 90s or early 2000s? I don't even know.
I think so, yeah.
Or Home Improvement. And at least then you started seeing how people don't always get along, and then they're annoyed by their in-laws and all of these other little facets of how real relationships actually work. And I think that was far more relatable to me.
Oh, and refreshing, because that's really how it is. There's no way. And then, exactly like you say, you hear about people's stories and what they have to deal with, and then you think, okay, they have this and this, but then they have this other thing that I would never want. So thank you, you can keep it. So it's great. But people hide. People don't want to be open about what's going on because they think we're going to judge them. And it's too bad that we can't help each other sooner by sharing more life experience. It's very difficult. Even we lucked out that we maybe some women found each other that are able to actually share reality. But in a lot of these places that you go, these activities, people are very topical. I have friends that I've been friends with for years, and some of the tennis people and some not. It's different. And they live next door near us, and I've known them for 5-6 years. I've never been inside their home, just things like that. And it's just odd. And I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Maybe they're spies. I don't know. But it's just very strange how they just keep it at a level.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And is it because they have a big, deep, dark secret? Maybe they're in witness protection program. I don't know.
Witness protection. I love it.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. Emotionally, let's switch gears here real quick. Emotionally, was there how did you handle the emotions while you were still grieving breakup?
Tennis and drinking. It's the truth. It's really true. I just really was not a drinker. And I'd say I really found red and white wine very exciting. Red mostly.
Very good.
Not every night, but yeah. But also a lot of exercise.
I learned a lot about my relationship with alcohol during that in-betweener relationship.
See?
Because the person that I thought I loved was very much attached to alcohol. And so that changed my perspective. And unfortunately, not a good drunk. And there are happy drunks and there are people who can handle their liquor.
Right.
He was not one of those people. He wasn't abusive. Don't get me wrong. He was never that way. But that kind of put me off. And I think I've never really, I don't think I enjoy
Yeah.
a glass of wine, and I love to pair wines and foods and do all of those things. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with enjoying alcohol, but I personally, I think I would have gone down that road.
Right.
But then immediately, because it was presented to me as social.
Right.
But then, because before that, I was in a very kind of buttoned up relationship, and it wasn't like we didn't ever have a drink, but it just wasn't part of our lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so then I had this chance, and I don't know, maybe it was my moment to step out and try new things. And I thought that I was having a good time, and then I wasn't.
So how did you deal with your emotions then?
First of all, I denied what my emotions really were.
Okay.
And instead of developing a friend network and trying to just be happy being alone, I went out and found this other person to fulfill my life, and then attempted again to try to devote myself to that relationship, and then was very surprised when it didn't work out and very confused. So that's when I went on my therapy journey and talked to someone. And I had been in therapy briefly during the first divorce too, but that was out of desperation. And I can still remember that poor psychologist. He was also a client, long story. I owned this little small business. And so we traded services because I didn't have an extra penny to my name. And so I would give him free administrative services, do his like dictation, things like that, or transcription. That's what I call medical transcription, and then he would give me a free session. And man, I just remember him at the end of like our second session, he goes, man, to look at you and to walk into your office and do business with you, you would never know how unhappy you are. And because I hit it well at work, and so he helped me with the it's okay.
Right.
You really have good reasons to pursue this. And then we tried, my first husband and I tried some therapy that didn't work out very well. There were a lot of caveats associated with that made it not very, we had rules about things we weren't allowed to talk about, so that should have been like red flag.
But I like it's very positive about you that he recognized the strength that you could separate the professional life and the personal life in such an effective way that you weren't breaking down. That's an incredible strength of yours.
Professional compartmentalizer. I don't know how healthy that is.
But that is very, because some people can't do it. They just completely are absorbed, and their life is over and they can't function. And I think that's worse than being able to say, I'm really unhappy, but I have these things I have to do, and then I can come home and figure out the rest. And I think I went through that too. Like, I held it together at work, and then I had the red wine waiting for me.
And you definitely have to hold it together in front of your kid.
Yes. Oh, that was the toughest
kids
thing.
For me, there's nothing wrong.
Did your kids ever say, and this thing it still breaks my heart, Mommy, are you happy?
Yeah. Or are you sad?
Yeah.
Mommy, are you sad right now? And then you just have to say, yes, Mommy's a little bit sad right now, but it's okay. Because you are going to have sad moments, and you can't hold it in all the time, and it's all right as long as you make it all right.
It's funny, and I was very, maybe you're better at it than I was, but I had a very hard time admitting to my daughter that I was sad. Here's this beautiful little child, and she's so full of life, and you just want to be happy with her, and you don't. And then I think she started thinking that I was not truthful at some point. She's like, Mommy, you were lying to me, kind of thing. I'm like, no, Mommy wasn't lying. Mommy just didn't want to make you sad. And it's just so complicated.
It is very complicated when children are involved, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any right or wrong answers.
No.
And everyone deals with this kind of pain in their very own way. I think what I learned after that second breakup was that I had to, and I was always taught never to prioritize yourself. I think that was like how I was brought up. It felt to me as selfish.
Yes.
But if you're not able to be confident and comfortable in your own, sitting in your own stuff, and then coming to terms with all of those feelings, then how can you truly give and receive? It's not even so much give, but receive love from another human. Because kids are one thing, but when you're in a voluntary relationship with somebody that you're dating,
Yes.
it's a completely different thing.
Yes.
And so luckily, when I moved and started again after that second relationship, I made another move, and that was the beginning of my healing process. I did see a therapist. I did get my head clear. I learned what my triggers were. I learned that definitely I was a people pleaser, and I needed to make sure that my needs were also met, and that it was okay to say, I am so happy to bend over backwards and do all of these things for you, but in exchange, I need X. And somebody who really cares about you in return is going to give you those things. And they're going to want to give you those things. They're not going to feel any sense of obligation to do it. They're just going to do it because they want to make you happy.
Right.
And they want to reciprocate. And so finding that person who wants to reciprocate in a relationship, and that goes for friendship too, right? It can't all be one-sided, no matter what it is.
Yes.
It has to be, there has to be a give and a take. And some people are going to be happy one day and having a bad day the next. Before we hit the record button, I was griping about how not fun my work day was. Yeah. And you were belaboring the latest in your caregiving journey. Yes. And all of the difficulties that you're suffering through there. Yeah. And it's all right. But because we're friends, we can lean in on each other and then bring it back. And I feel better for having vented, and I felt lighter for having been able to say a couple of little things to you.
Yeah, same.
And so then we're able to have, although this is a pretty heavy conversation, we can have it with a light heart.
Yeah, no, it is heavy. It's hard because it brings back those memories and feelings that we've forgotten about or just don't think about as often, let's say.
Yes.
But yes, you're right. You have to process the difficult feelings and sit with them and just let them go. And I think there's a fear in doing that because I think sometimes you can become so overwhelmed that maybe it's just so uncomfortable. There are people that I know that have never processed these feelings, and I think the reason they cannot get a new relationship is because of this.
Yes. So know thyself, people. Know thyself.
Yep.
I think that getting to that point can be very difficult, but making sure that you don't sacrifice your friend group or establish a friend group.
Yeah.
Some marriages, and we actually have a guest coming soon who was very isolated by virtue of the person that they were married, which was very interesting. I hope that I shouldn't probably say anything because I don't have it until I have the interview in the bag, I don't like to say, but the isolation and the inability to just find ways to be happy with, even if it's just one friend or just two casual friends. It doesn't even have to be like a close confidant type friend. And getting out and socializing and doing some things is going to really make a difference in your ability to feel value and feel like you're part of society, that you're connected to other humans, that you're feeling, even just like getting out and laughing. I can remember several times when I was feeling, like this day has lasted forever and I just don't want to do anything. I just want to crawl under a blanket, watch TV, and then someone would call, or I would remember that I had an opportunity to socialize, and it would be so easy to just say, no, I don't think so. But instead, I went ahead and I went to the event, or I said yes to the invitation, and I cannot ever remember a situation where I felt worse for having made that decision.
I don't think you'd ever regret that. I think it's always a positive. Yeah.
And so you have to remember that when you're feeling down and not in the mood to say yes to a social invitation, that is the best time to say yes.
Yeah. Again, we've talked about this before. Having a social life, exercising, whatever it is, it takes effort. It takes motivation. You have to do it. And sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you're not in the mood. But at the end, you get the greatest benefit because you did it.
Yeah.
And you have to remember what is going to be the reward for doing it. So yes, I agree with you. It's much easier to sit at home and, I can binge watch so many Netflix shows. And I realize, gosh, sometimes it's a good idea to just get out and not do that. Yeah, especially when it's nice outside. Yeah. In winter, you can make an excuse. There's ice outside. There's
right.
Whatever.
And there's so much, we preach this all the time, just taking a walk will lift your spirit. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of science out there that proves that just getting out of your own head, doing a reset mentally is going to make a big difference and give you some perspective. Feeling okay to not feel okay is all right to a certain extent. It can't be the predominant factor in your life. That's clinical depression, and we don't want to spend all of our time
being unhappy.
But analyzing the feelings that you feel and figuring out how to prevent them in the future is a very cathartic experience. I can remember a time when I took a long drive and just to clear my head once, and all of a sudden the answer came to me. Okay, this is because I'm allowing this person to tell me that I'm wrong, and I know I'm not wrong. And so why am I allowing this person to impact my mood and how I feel about myself when in my heart I know that I'm only doing good things and there's no reason why I should feel bad in the first place. But when you're in that feeling of being accused of something or feeling like someone is just, I don't know, whatever it is that they're trying to make you feel bad, that's manipulation. And that's almost verbal. It is verbally abusive and harmful. And if you have someone who is constantly giving you negative messaging and never giving you anything
positive,
yes, or they're love bombing you,
yes,
and then all of a sudden the next day you've got a completely different person, that's not cool. That trust is one of the key components of a healthy relationship. Right. Communication is a key component of every healthy relationship. Yes. And the one that I hold above all else is respect. And if you're not feeling respect and trust, then the communication is most likely off. Yeah. But those are the questions that second therapist started to ask me. Do you feel like you trust this person? Not really. Do you feel like you had good communication with this person? No, not really. So all three questions were asked and answered, no, not really. So then why are you even grieving the loss of this relationship other than the time that you invested in it? And, you're feeling a little guilty that the other person might not have had the same desire to end the relationship that you did. So usually that's the way it goes. It's very seldom that a relationship breaks up and it's mutual. Yeah. There are some very
unusual
circumstances where both people can come to terms and say, yes, I see that we've both moved on and
right.
That's
in the movies though.
Yeah. I don't know. Someone else very close to me is going through a relationship breakup right now, very slowly. I don't want to betray any confidences or give out too much information because this person is very close to me, but they are doing it very maturely and they understand the reason one person asked for the breakup and the other person didn't, but the other person is so emotionally mature that they are understanding the reasoning for the other person's need to move on and granting them that grace. And I watched that from afar, and I am in awe of the level of emotional maturity that requires to love the person in spite of wanting to break up. Yeah, and
amazing.
It's extremely amazing, and it's still very painful. And there is acknowledgement of that between the two parties, and they're handling it beautifully. So there are those rare occurrences, those unicorn events.
That's
where
right. Those are unicorn events.
people grow apart for whatever reason, and it can be done.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what do you think our takeaways are for this episode? I think
I don't know. That's a big question.
it is a big question. So I think process your emotions.
Yes,
Allow
yeah.
the grieving process to happen after a breakup.
Value yourself.
Value yourself enough
Yes.
that when you're ready, and the grieving part, and we all get to feel sorry for ourselves for a little
Yes,
bit.
yeah.
And we all get to cry, and we all get to get angry. And then when the acceptance hits, there's denial in there too, right? The
Sure.
stages of grief.
Yeah.
And then when we get to acceptance, then it's time to focus on you first.
Yes.
Make sure. And I think that's another kind of takeaway that I forgot to mention earlier. I think the biggest learning lesson for me was to know what you need in a relationship.
Yeah, that's a tough one though. You have to really do some self kind of reflection to figure that out, and also figuring out what first you need, and then you can figure out what you need. So it goes both ways. So knowing what you want, what you need, and then what do you need in that relationship, and knowing that no one person is going to make you happy. That's not what it's about. It's about finding someone who you enjoy being with, that respects you, that you can trust and love, but they're not going to necessarily change your life, rescue you. They can enhance your life, but again, it should be two independent people coming together.
I had a thought in there and now I've lost it. I think, but as you were speaking, what came to me was that you have to be willing, and this is for friendships as well as intimate relationships, you have to be willing to accept someone else for who they are, and know that person would never willfully harm you emotionally, physically, all of the things. And that you have enough trust in them that they're going to mess up. I'm going to mess up. You're going to mess up. We're going to mess up. All relationships have moments of people doing the wrong things, letting their emotions carry them away for a moment. But I think the thing about emotions is I can be upset, but I'm usually upset at the situation, not ever at the person.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I think that when you get into a relationship with somebody and they're always trying to focus on resolution, that's always a good sign. But I think basically making sure that you've got somebody that you can trust, that you feel respects you as well as you respect them back, and that communication, you're able to talk things out. I had a interesting conversation at work earlier with someone, and I was a little emotional. It had just been a rough day all around, and there was something that I needed an explanation for. A situation had gone on, and I wasn't super happy about it, just to be quite honest. And we had an honest exchange of words, and it got a little bit heated in the middle. But then the great thing about that conversation was that we each ended up apologizing to one another because we were willing to listen to each other's perspectives. And then I understood where that person was coming from, that person understood where I was coming from, and we met in the middle.
That's awesome.
And I think that she made a joke about, yeah, we can fight like sisters. At least we still know that we still love each other at the end. And so that was a really good outcome to that conversation. And I think that's what a friend relationship is like. And that's how an intimate relationship feels when it's healthy. But you have to be confident in yourself, and you have to be willing to listen as well as to express.
Yes.
I think one of the things that I'm trying to think, I don't have it written down anywhere, so I can't reference it. But there was an email. No, this wasn't an email that we got. This was a Reddit string that I read. And the person was going on and on about how their spouse did not understand them. And that whole string was full of everything that they did wrong. And there was no acknowledgement anywhere in that Reddit string about how that person may have contributed to the problems. And so that was very telling. So you've got to be able to accept some of the accountability.
Yes,
Because
definitely.
it takes two to tango, people.
It does.
It always does.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how healthy the relationship is. It doesn't matter how perfect you're being in any given moment. It takes two people to have an argument. And
That's right.
nobody's ever 100%.
Yourself, but
Yeah. I can argue with myself, though.
Yeah. But
I'm
then-
good at that.
Yeah, okay.
Don't you ever argue with yourself?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes I come out, I have to reason things out.
That's right.
Yeah. I just try not to, like, bring myself down or
While you're doing
you do
it.
all of those things. But
That's good.
we've already talked about that in a previous episode.
Yes, we did.
Go backwards, people. All right. Anything else on this topic?
I think we've covered a lot.
I think we have.
Oh.
All right. So be kind to yourself, people, and make sure that when you're going through a tough time and you're starting to feel isolated or lonely, that you do attempt to reach out or establish some sort of a social connection, because it will make all the difference in the world.
Yep. And be kind to yourself.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is everything.
Yep.
All right. Until next week, everybody.
See ya.
Hey, Social Leopards. Don't slink back into the jungle quite yet. We have 2 important messages to share. First, remember to like this episode, drop us a comment, and if you haven't done it yet, follow this show or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can reach us on social media. You can also email share@socialleopards.com to contact us privately. All links are in the show notes. We love and appreciate hearing from those who listen to the show.
Second, we want you to know that this show is not intended to be a replacement for professional therapy. If you are struggling or if you need to interact with another person, check out the show notes for resources. Thanks for listening.